Brett Yormark publicly endorsing the 5-11 model, and for the playoff, because obviously there's been that in the 4-4-2-2 model and all that it proposed. Steven Smith says, I think Brett Yormark is getting the conference in the right direction. We just need to focus on making sure everyone is on the same path. I think for the most part, Brett Yormark has done a pretty good job. It seems like the schools are aligned. I think initially Utah was not aligned with the rest of the conference, and they were here literally just because they had to be in a power conference. But after getting their butt whooped in basically every sport last year, um, I think they are more in line and understanding that they should be here and should be thankful for the opportunity that was given to them to be in this conference. Um, But so Britt Yormark publicly endorsed the 5-11 model, which is just the conference champions get an auto bid, and then the rest of it is at larges. And he said that he expects the ACC commissioner to make the same thing as well. So the question is what direction should they go with this? I have been on Mark Rogers' show a couple times. I was just on there last week and today. We were talking about a little bit. I am a full endorser of the 5-11 model as it currently stands. So the 4-4-2 model is 4 auto bids for the Big Ten, 4 for the SEC, 2 for the ACC, 2 for the Big 12, and then at larges from there. There's a couple issues I see here. So let's talk pros and cons here. The obvious pro of the 4-4-2-2 for the Big 12 is that you have 2 guaranteed bids every year. So almost always your champion and runner up and your other, conference championship contender, your other conference championship participant are both going to be in the playoff every year. That's good. Guarantees you're always there. Guarantees you have multiple representatives. However, I see downsides here. One, that model essentially guarantees that you are never going to see a third team in the playoff. Never. Because it leaves no room. Because you got to remember that any of these models, the 5-11 or the 4-4-2-2, basically should also have another 1 stapled onto it for Notre Dame. Notre Dame, if they are 9 wins or better, even maybe 10 wins or 10 wins or better for sure. Maybe 9 wins or better. Probably if Notre Dame has 10 wins, they are in the playoff. Period. That's just how it's gonna work. The 4-4-2-2 model has more playoff spots, like quite a few more spots locked up. And if you have Notre Dame shoved in there, the last, the few remaining spots are gonna just be SEC Big Ten teams. That's it. That's all they're gonna be, and that's all we're gonna have. The 5-11 model does not make necessarily the chances of the Big 12 having a third team any better. It doesn't make it worse. It maybe makes it like a touch better because technically if the SEC beat each other up, if the SEC or the Big 10 had too many teams sitting at 9 wins and they just beat each other up a bunch, would they get all 4 teams? Would they get 4 teams in or just 3 type of thing? And would that extra spot then go to the ACC or the Big 12? Depends on what's going on in that year. But more importantly, if you go to the 4-4-2-2 model, you as a conference, as the Big 12 and the ACC, are putting it on paper that you believe you are half as valuable as a conference as the SEC and the Big 10. Putting it in paper, in writing, that you as a conference believe that. Not that the SEC or the Big 10 believes that, not that the ESPN believes that, but that you, the conference, believes that you are half as good as the other two conferences. I see that as a big loss for a conference that has been fighting for its life for the last 15 years and just trying to keep everything afloat, despite ESPN and Texas and Oklahoma trying to shoot it out of the water about 15 different times. And I don't think you can go forward and be taken seriously as a conference if you just up front admit that you're just not as valuable as the SEC in the Big 10. And sure, are the TV contracts equal? No. The TV, the SEC and the Big 10 obviously have more lucrative TV deals. No question about it. However, there's a difference between ESPN deciding what they were worth to you, what you guys are, all the conferences are worth to them, and you as a conference deciding that you are worth less than the other conferences yourself. I think that causes. I think that's it's. I think it's bad for the direction of the conference as far as keeping the conference together, as far as making keeping confidence that the conference is on a path moving forward. To me that feels like you know you're yeah, you are artificially propping up two teams. Um, you're artificially propping up two teams into the playoff, but then you're also, they're not, the second one's not going to be taken seriously because they're just the extra playoff team. The Big 12 only got two in because, they only got two in because that's just what they're supposed to get. And now they're not taken seriously or whatever it is. And then if they lose in the first round, then it's like, well, they should have never been there. The Big 12 is an unserious conference. They shouldn't be paid attention to and all this. And all of it goes downhill for the Big 12 from there. But at least with the 5-11 model, there's enough teams, the top 16 teams, that the Big 12 should be able to get two teams in there most years. I believe. I believe they should. Um, and like if last year's 12 team playoff was instead 16 teams, the Big 12 would have gotten a second team in. They would have. I think most years you're still going to give yourself two teams, but you don't have to put it in writing that you believe you are worth less than the other conferences. I think that's an important distinction to make, even if it results in you getting the same number of playoff teams. If you want to have leverage in any future, agreements, any bargaining for maybe a new league that splits off, and you want to figure out how to distribute everything, whatever it is. If you say, "Hey, our conference is less than the other two, it is less meaningful, it is less valuable, it is," and you admit that as a school, it will be used as leverage against you. Anything you can anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of public opinion. If the Big 12 agrees to it, you're just saying, yes, please, just I'll take whatever I want. You become a beggar. And I don't want that to be the Big 12. I don't want that to be the conference that Iowa State is in, is the conference that is just choosing to be a beggar, or I don't like that. Steven Smith says, what are your thoughts on the Big 12 not doing any preseason poll for the season? I'm on the record. I believe preseason polls are deeply stupid. I don't think that they are worth anybody's time. I don't think they're worth paying attention to because nobody has any idea what the hell's going on. The transfer portal has created so much roster turnover all across the country that you don't really know what these teams are look like until about October. Because the problem here is that the Big 12's issue here too is that because the league is so there's so much parity in the league and it's so hard to predict. The more often that you have the last place team do really well, the team that was picked last do really well. Unfortunately, like if this was the SEC or the Big Ten and they picked Purdue to finish last and then Purdue ended up being a playoff team, that would speak to the strength of the SEC and the Big Ten, that that even their last place team is, a playoff team. However, for the Big 12, that is unfortunately not how things get spun. 2 years ago, West Virginia was picked last in the conference, finished 9-3. Last year, Arizona State was picked last, won the Big 12. And that's not to take away from what Arizona State did. They did, that was awesome. They had an unbelievable season. I would assume probably the best season in school history. And unfortunately, it didn't look awesome for the Big 12 because now it's like, well, if your last place team won the league, the team that this team is bad, but they still won the league. That means your league is bad. For the Big 12, I think it makes complete sense to get rid of preseason polls because you can't control what the narrative is that comes from national pundits for the playoff committee or whatever it is. And the more often that the media is completely wrong on these teams, unfortunately does not tell everybody that this conference is wide open and super fun and everyone should watch it. It means that the league is weak and not capable of producing champions. And that sucks because it's not true. Like you said, so to be the case with the Big 12, you could have 3 teams with better records, 11-1 or 10-2, but a 9-3 team could get in simply because they're the SEC. I mean, I think that could happen. If it's an 11-1 Big 12 team and a 9-3 SEC team, I think they would probably give it to the Big 12 team. The important part here to remember too is that for the most part in the 12-team playoff era, and maybe even the 4-team era, the playoff committee has largely gotten it right. They haven't really, like there was in the 4-team era, there was always a fifth team. There was, in the 12-team era, there's always a 13th team. So someone's gonna feel like they got snubbed. Um, but for the most part, the committee has gotten it right, pretty much right or all right most years. And so in the end, if a Big 12 team is deserving of getting to the playoff, I do have some faith in the committee to put the deserving team in over a 9-3 SEC team just on the basis of they draw eyeballs. I think they would I think they would do that. I think they would use their better judgment. I can't guarantee that they would, but I have some faith that they would. But it's hard to say. But either way, I don't if you're the Big 12, I don't think you can in good conscience go into accepting the 4-4-2 model and then just publicly admit that you don't think your conference is worthy of the same recognition as the Big 10 and the SEC, or that it's worthy of basically almost that it's even worthy of playing for the same championship. And I think that's a huge issue.